Here we are, years later, the families have no clue as to what happened to their loved ones, and quit blaming the dead guy. This suggestion that Chris Stevens had fault for his own death. Chris Stevens was in Benghazi because that's where he was supposed to be, doing what America wanted him to do, try to hold Libya together.
Well, that was Senator Lindsey Graham with that blistering criticism of the Obama administration, the State Department, on the heels of last week's Senate report on Benghazi finding that the deadly attack could have been prevented. That report coming just as Hillary Clinton said to be rushing to finish a book of her time as Secretary of State as a way to shore up her legacy before a potential run for 2016. Big stakes on the line here now. Kirsten Powers, columnist for the Daily Beast, and Tony Sayegh, Republican campaign consultant, national political correspondent for Talk Radio News Service, and both are Fox News contributors. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
And thank you for your time today. Yeah, I think this is fascinating, how you're framing your legacy several years out when you're already getting pushback from the other side, Tony. I mean, what's at play right now that this Senate report is on the table, do you think?
The most significant thing, Bill, about the Senate report is the fact that it was issued in a bipartisan way. We've seen a lot of these charges made before. We've actually confirmed a lot of these findings. The fact that it was a lapse of security, the fact the State Department did not authorize increased security in spite of the request from Ambassador Stevens from Central Intelligence to do so in Benghazi, particularly around the 9/11 date. That we knew. What we hadn't had up until this point was Democrats joining Republicans in this condemnation. And that illustrates the fact that for Hillary Clinton, who candidly has had a very long tenure in public life, many people will say a good one, certainly a historic one, her most adept and inept decisions of her public career, for which she will be judged, happened in the wake of Benghazi. Adept, avoiding the Sunday talk shows to peddle this whole narrative about a false anti-Muslim YouTube video. Inept, this very shrill and dismissive testimony she gave in front of the congressional committees investigating Benghazi, where she said, what difference does it make? Yeah. Those are the goalposts.
Okay. All right, let me squeeze in Kirsten on this, too, because that's the argument that she will hear about minimal accomplishments. And Democrats, right, well, and probably the book as well, Kirsten, will try and paint her as a groundbreaking female Secretary of State. Go ahead.
Right. Well, she's going to have to make the case, because I think that when you look at the things right now that are being pointed to as her major accomplishments, one of the top ones that they mention is the intervention in Libya. And I think that, personally, I don't think that actually really was a great decision, and I don't think it's gone that well. And it's because of that intervention, frankly, that we had, our ambassador in the situation that he was in. And then, of course, every time you raise Libya, the first thing that's going to come up is Benghazi. And because you have this report that was bipartisan and where there was a lot of criticism, frankly, I think most of the criticism, the most damning part of it, was what was said about Hillary Clinton. I think she's going to have to try to explain exactly what happened there, because it doesn't reflect very well on her.
Now, I think what is potentially even more troubling, actually, is what Fox News was reporting a week ago. And that is the leaders at the Pentagon, the day of the attack, knew within 15 minutes of the attack beginning that it was terrorism, Tony. We know that now.
Look, Bill, this story is going to metastasize the more Hillary Clinton stays in the public spotlight, which is why she's rushing to put out her version in her autobiography. Now, people understand when you put out a book about yourself, you're telling one side of the story. The interesting difference is going to be if she makes any revelations into differences of policy with the administration in what is really a failed Middle East policy. Kirsten mentioned Libya. It extends to Cairo, where we abandoned Mubarak. We have now the Muslim Brotherhood. It goes into the undermining of our relationships with Israel and Saudi Arabia, our inept policy in Syria, which Bill Clinton has begun to distance Hillary from, the Obama policy. So I would really be more interested in what she's going to say she disagreed with the president about.
What you both are laying out that's an extensive record, Kirsten.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I have a certain perspective on Obama's foreign policy that maybe, all Democrats don't share, although a lot do, which is that it hasn't been a very good foreign policy. And I don't think that there's a lot to be proud of. And so if that's what she's going to be running on, I think she has a tough sell. I don't think, and even looking at the things that she says, I mean, look, what did President Obama say in that 60 Minutes interview? What makes her such an amazing Secretary of State is that she has, the most frequent flyer miles? I mean, come on, that's ridiculous. It's not, that's not an accomplishment. So she's going to, I'm open to hearing what she has to say to explain, what her accomplishments were, but she was a little bit weighted down by a president with a bad foreign policy.
Thanks to both of you. Appreciate you coming in. Kirsten Powers, Tony
Thank you.
Saig, thank you. We've got to run.
Thanks, Bill.
Martha.